On today's narrated PowerPoint, we will talk about mental health skills for ministers. Hello, this is Steve Googe, welcoming you back to another session in Pastoral Ministry 402. Persons with mental illness have never been more visible in our congregations and communities or more in need of pastoral ministry than they are today. Here are some mental health facts. 1 in 4 American adults experiences some type of mental illness in a given year. 58 million Americans and 450 million persons worldwide suffer from mental disorders. Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. 13.6 million adults in the United States alone live with serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, major depression, or bipolar disorders. 1 million people die every year from suicide. Here's what you will learn in this narrated PowerPoint. An indispensable ingredient in the improvement of a mentally ill person. You will learn RESPECT for the mentally ill. A definition of stigma, why mental illness mitigates against a healthy spiritual life, the role of the minister in mental health, and some warning signs for suicide. Does mental illness only affect adults? 50% of all chronic mental illness begins by the age of 14. 75% of all chronic mental illness begins by age 24. So no age is immune from susceptibility to mental illness. What do you see on the slide before you? It is one of the pictures used in the Rorschach inkblot test. The Rorschach test is a psychological test in which subjects' perceptions of ink blots are recorded and then analyzed using psychological interpretation, complex algorithms, or both. Some psychologists use this test to examine a person's personality characteristics and emotional functioning. On the next slide, you will see a video clip taken from a movie entitled A Beautiful Mind, starring Russell Crowe, who played John Nash. Nash was a brilliant, Princeton-educated mathematician who was awarded the Nobel laureate in economics, but was at times totally incapacitated because of his battle with schizophrenia. The clip you will see is entitled Charles Isn't Here. In it, Dr. Nash is in a psychiatric hospital, and after a fall, he looks up and sees his college roommate, who is not actually there. I show this clip to you as an example of an extreme case of mental illness.
Go easy now. Thorazine takes a little while to wear off. Sorry about the restraints. You've got one hell of a right hook. Where am I? MacArthur Psychiatric Hospital.
I find that highly unlikely. I made a mistake. My work is non-military in application.
Which work is that, John?
I don't know anything.
There's no good in keeping secrets, you know.
Charles? I didn't mean to get you involved in this. I'm sorry. Charles. The prodigal roommate revealed. Saw my name on the lecture slate. You lying son of a bitch!
Who are you talking to? Tell me who you see.
How do you say Charles Harmon in Russian? How do you say it in Russian?
There's no one there, John. There's no one there.
He's right there. He's right there. Stop. I don't know anything. Stop. I don't know anything. My name is John Nash. I'm being held against my will. Somebody call the Department of Defense. My name is John Nash. I'm being held against my will.
Joel Slack, who is an advocate for those suffering with mental illness, has said this: "People only recover from mental illness in the context of healthy relationships." Where could those relationships be found? Well, in the church. That's one place. And people do only recover when they have healthy relationships. However, as we'll see on the next slide, it is sometimes difficult for individuals suffering from mental illness to find healthy relationships. An indispensable ingredient in the improvement of a mentally ill person is cultivating solid, strong relationships. In the previous slide, we talked about the fact that people only recover from mental illness in the context of healthy relationships. The problem is mental illness mitigates against a healthy spiritual life and mitigates against developing relationships that are solid. Why? Because those who are mentally ill have a tendency to withdraw and become isolated from other persons. They also, second, have distortions in their thinking. They sometimes think people do not like them, or are out to get them, or don't want them to be in their company, or their community, or their congregation. Often there is confusion. The fourth thing is a poor self-concept, that is, no one would want to associate with me anyway. And then 5, broken relationships. Broken relationships occur when a mentally ill person continues to reject the help of others, or offends those who attempt to help them, or withdraw from those who want to provide help and encouragement to them. So you can see mental illness does mitigate against a healthy spiritual life and a connection with solid relationships. How can you, as a minister, demonstrate respect for a mentally ill person? Well, Joel Slack suggests that we use the word respect. Now, the word respect can be defined as an uncompromisingly high regard for the dignity of another human being. Let's use the word respect and form an acrostic, and let this help us respond to those who are mentally ill. R stands for responsiveness. Be responsive to the needs of those who are mentally ill. Respond to them as appropriate and when you can. One warning: responsiveness should not reach the point of becoming a burden to you. For example, a mentally ill person can ask for your time and attention more often than is really needed. So put some margins around your life. Reach the point of understanding how to be responsive to help an individual. Remember, you can say no. E stands for encouraging. Individuals need encouragement in our world. We need to provide that kind of encouragement for a mentally ill person. Encouragement that they can make it. Encouragement that they are an important person, made in the image of God. Encouragement in the area of helping them know they're capable. we need to be sensitive to mentally ill people. We need to be sensitive to them, sensitive in the way that they see the world, in their worldview, sensitive to their needs, sensitive to them as a human being. P stands for peaceful. Never engage in an argumentative session with a mentally ill person. Create a peaceful environment in which you can communicate and express love. E stands for empowering. Help the individual to understand that they can accomplish many things perhaps they think they cannot accomplish. Empower them by not doing things for them that they are capable of doing for themselves. C stands for caring. Care for the individual. Demonstrate that care by listening to them when they talk, by encouraging them to take responsibility for their own care and their own life, but demonstrate that you care for them. When they call, in a reasonable amount of time, return their call. When they ask for something you can do for them, do it in a timely fashion. And T, thoughtful. Be thoughtful of the person who is mentally ill. Think through what type of caring expression would I appreciate if I happened to be in their shoes. So, respect. RESPECT. That's a memory tool to help you know how to care for a mentally ill person. Now I want to share with you a very important aspect of this presentation. According to the U.S. Surgeon General, the most formidable obstacle to future progress in the area of mental illness is stigma. Here's a definition of the word stigma. It's a negative judgment, a misperception, a bias, or stereotype, in this case, based on a mental health condition. Stigma leads to frustration, fear, shame, anger, low self-esteem, rejection, discrimination, labeling, and isolation. In addition to this, stigma leads to avoidance, pretending nothing is wrong, and resistance to treatment. Now, stigma is reduced with improved knowledge, public education, advocacy, better understanding, acceptance of differences, more effective treatments. We need to learn how to see mental illness and mental health not as polar opposites, but as points on a continuum. The church can be one of the worst offenders in the area of stigma. The language we use should reflect our belief in the dignity of each individual and that we are all created in the image and likeness of a loving God. It is important to use people-first language. We need to refer to people as the person they are and not the illness they have. You'll notice the name tag above that says, "Hello, my name is not schizophrenia." Instead of referring to people as the mentally ill, we should say a person who has a mental illness. Just as we don't refer to some people as the cancer person, appropriate language helps us to dispel misinformation about various forms of mental illness. Take just a moment now and read the cartoon that you see on this slide. It's not a very funny cartoon. Pause the narrated PowerPoint and read the cartoon. Ministers have the opportunity and responsibility to model appropriate language when speaking about persons with mental illness. The language we use can compound the stigma and misconceptions about mental illness, or it can educate persons and help reduce the stigma and shame associated with these illnesses of the brain. We've all heard stigmatizing language from other people and from the media. Words like crazy, psycho, loony, nuts, or other demeaning terms are not only hurtful, they are not accurate. On this slide and the one that will follow, we will talk about the role of ministers in the cases of mental illness. Number one, a minister should give support and care at the time of treatment. Be sure to visit this person just like you would any other member of your church. Number two, you may assist physicians and others. It's good to have a working relationship with the psychiatrists. Form friendships with them. Number 3, give to balanced ministry. Do not devote all of your time to the ones in the hospital. Family members truly need your care as well. Number 4, give prayer and support even outside the presence of the patient. In other words, during your devotion time, during your prayer time, spend time praying for the patient even though you're not visiting them. Number 5, be willing to focus on the family if you cannot see the patient. There will be times the patient will be behind locked doors, and when that occurs, focus your attention on the patient's family. Number 6, it might be possible for you to focus your ministry around the Christian understanding of psychology and psychiatry. We need good Christian counselors. Suicide is the 9th leading cause of death in the United States of America. The suicide rate is higher for the elderly than for any other age group. That might surprise you. Most suicidal persons give definite warning signs of their suicidal intentions, but others are often unaware of the significance of these warnings or unsure what to do about them. That's the reason why I wanted to put some of the signs of suicide risk on this PowerPoint. You'll know that a person's risk is significantly higher if they begin to want to talk about dying or killing themselves. Another sign is the discussion or talk of a specific suicidal plan, making arrangements. Another sign is behavior that would be potentially lethal, such as hoarding medication, talking about feeling hopeless, or having no reason to live is another warning sign. Acting irritably, agitated, or enraged can be a sign. Another sign is sleeping too little or too much. Loss of interest in things one cares about. Withdrawal from pleasurable activities. And last on this general list is isolation from relationships, withdrawing from friends and family. Firearms are the most common method of suicide across all age, sex, and ethnic groups, and rates are increasing. Talking about suicide does not, I underline that word not. Talking about suicide does not cause someone to be suicidal, nor does it mean that someone is less likely to commit suicide if you avoid the subject. Some very prominent Southern Baptist pastors have seen their children commit suicide in recent years. For example, Pastor Rick Warren's son Matthew committed suicide at the age of 27. And then Frank Page, president of the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee, lost his child, Melissa, to suicide as well. Frank Page has written an excellent book that talks about the life of his daughter. Perhaps you might want to read that book. It truly does address mental illness and particularly suicide. I would recommend the book. It is entitled A Father's Lessons from a Daughter's Suicide. When you are confronted with a person that you think is suicidal, you must act immediately. Don't postpone or procrastinate. Talk to someone. Get someone involved. Help the person. One of the things that I've used over the years is to engage in a covenant of life. I make a covenant or a contract of life with the individual who is suicidal and ask them to make a commitment to me that they will not commit suicide until they have talked with me. And I ask them to then form a covenant or contract with me of life. That is, I am going to live, not commit suicide.